2 seconds of your time. This is me after a year and a half of working out hard. And this is me after 3 years of continuously working out hard. And this is me 3 years after that. And this is after I already cut down. Now, I got all these results naturally, and I 10x my results in just 3 years by perfecting my nutrition and my training. The point is that usually I talk about fat loss on this channel, but I also have a lot of knowledge on the topic of bulking up and building muscle. So I was about to put together a program and charge for it, but I want to share my complete bulking and muscle building blueprint with all my subscribers for free. This is the same blueprint that I used when I went from point A to point B in just 3 years. And I spent a lot of my time in my life bulking, and now I just want to give all that knowledge back to you guys. Now, even if you're not really looking for a bulky bodybuilder body type, but you're just trying to learn how to build some muscle, even if you're a woman trying to tone up, I highly recommend that you watch this video because a lot of the same concepts will apply to any kind of muscle building goal. You just wouldn't take the concepts to the extreme that a bodybuilder would have to take them to. Okay, let me jump right into this. Let's first start with nutrition because it's the most important thing, and at the same time, it's the part that's often the most neglected and the most misunderstood. Most people will start their muscle building journey at the gym rather than in the kitchen. Luckily, there's this little thing called newbie gains, and that allows a beginner to build muscle a lot easier than someone that's already been working out for quite a while. So you can experience newbie gains for your first year, maybe even as far as a year and a half after you first start weight training, but it's definitely not going to last longer than that. At that point, you're going to have to start focusing on nutrition. But why not just start focusing on nutrition from the very beginning to speed up the time that it takes you to get to your goal? By the way, while we're on the topic of newbie gains, might as well answer this common muscle building question. You're only going to be able to build muscle and burn fat at the same time in that initial newbie gains phase, which I'm telling you does not last very long. So might as well just focus on nutrition from the get-go. When trying to bulk up, you have to eat enough food to create a calorie surplus in your diet. That just means that you're going to be taking in more calories than you're burning on a daily basis. How do you figure out your surplus calories? Well, at the end of this video, you're just going to go to the link at the bottom in the description below for the macro calculator. And then once you enter in your stats, it'll give you your macros and calories for building muscle for your particular body. I made this calculator myself, so I'm sure it's accurate, but here's the thing. This goes out to all the hard gainers out there. If you have a very fast metabolism and you have a very hard time putting on muscle, you may want to drastically exceed these numbers that it gives you. A lot of my hard gainer clients became a lot more successful when we just threw away macros altogether and just tried to force down as much food as possible in a 24-hour period. Again, that only applies to hard gainers, people with fast metabolisms, because if you don't have a fast metabolism, you may be storing a whole lot of fat, which you can cut down later, but it's just going to be extra work. Now, one key thing that you guys have to understand about nutrition, whether you have a fast metabolism or a slow metabolism, when your goal is to build muscle, your diet is going to require you to eat to the point of being full. Being full is uncomfortable, just like being hungry is uncomfortable. Muscle building diets really don't sound all that bad for your first 2 or 3 meals, and then when you have to eat again and again and again and more food, it becomes very, very challenging. It is literally just as challenging as dieting for fat loss and being hungry, so expect that. Also, don't be afraid of putting on some fat. Again, you could get rid of that later. Every time that I did a bulk, I would gain a lot of muscle and I would also gain some fat in the process. That's okay. Another thing everyone knows, I'm a big fan of fasting. However, I definitely do not recommend intermittent fasting for a bulking diet plan. Again, general muscle building, you can get away with intermittent fasting. But other than that, it's going to be really tough to get the amount of food into your body that you need to bulk up and fill out your muscles. Since you're only eating once or twice a day when you're fasting, I don't know how you're going to force down 3,000 or 4,000 calories in such a short amount of time. For building muscle, I recommend you aim to eat as many times during the day as possible. This isn't done to prevent you from burning muscle or because of some other bro science myth. It's simply done to get as much food into your body as possible within 24 hours. As far as the type of food, do not be afraid of carbs. Carbs are your body's primary source of fuel and energy. This will give you the energy required to lift heavy weights that I want you to lift. Also, when you have a moderate to high carb diet in combination with a high protein diet, you decrease the chances of muscle loss a lot more than just a high protein diet alone. You want to keep your protein intake at about 1 gram per pound of body weight. You can go lower and still build muscle, but I wouldn't go lower than 0.7 grams per pound of body weight when doing a heavy weight training program. Really, you can bulk up on any kind of macronutrient split, but I found that the best results for me were the traditional 40-40-20 classic bodybuilding split, where you would have 40% of your daily calories coming from protein, another 40% coming from carbs, and 20 coming from fats. The split works very, very well, and I highly recommend keeping carbs at least 40% for all the hard gainers and people that are struggling gaining muscle. I have a bunch of different macronutrient splits that you could choose from on the website when you visit the macro calculator at the end of the video. Again, I recommend starting with a very basic 40-40-20 split. Keep your carb sources complex, like the type you get from yams, sweet potatoes, oatmeal, quinoa, and my favorite, brown rice. Make sure you're selecting protein sources that are bioavailable so you get the maximum absorption possible. As delicious as it might sound to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich as a good source of protein, peanuts rank very low on the bioavailability index, meaning that if it says if it has 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, it says that you're getting 8 grams of protein. In reality, due to the low absorption rate, you may only be getting 4 or 5 grams. Lastly, as far as vegetables, you may want to cut vegetables back while bulking up. Even though this isn't the healthiest advice, this is necessary in order to be able to eat more high-calorie, complex carbs, protein sources, and healthy fats. Vegetables are very high in fiber and very low in calories, meaning they'll fill up your stomach without contributing much to your calorie surplus that you're after. Stick to vegetables like spinach that can be cooked down and are easy to eat and digest, but are still packed with tons of vitamins. Before I make this whole video about nutrition, I'm going to move on to the training bit. But real quick, I just want to remind you guys 2 major points. You have to eat enough food where it'll become uncomfortable, and don't be afraid of putting on some body fat. You can always cut it down later. For training, there's 2 major strategies you have to focus on. Number 1, progressive overload. And number 2, pumping your muscles full of blood, also known as the pump. One of the best ways to progressively overload your muscles is by engaging in heavy weight training, and then progressively moving up your weights used over time. As a natural lifter, you're simply not synthesizing protein anywhere near the rate that a steroid user is. That's why they can bulk up with lighter weights. As a natural, good luck with the high reps lightweight strategy. Progressively performing heavier and heavier lifts around the 5 to 8 rep range seems to work best for building muscle for naturals. Now, to get your muscles to grow, you want to pump as much blood in there as possible during your workouts. Even though fatigue, lactic acid, and muscles full of blood don't necessarily always relate, very often they do correlate. So try to progress yourselves towards fatigue. You should definitely be at the point of failure, and you should definitely be fatigued at the end of your workout. Meaning, your muscles are gonna be giving out on your last sets and your last reps. I'm a big fan of performing compound exercises to failure, or at least as close to failure as possible, and then immediately supersetting. Guys, this is huge. Supersetting was one of my best techniques to build muscle. Start with a compound exercise in which you go really heavy for around 6 reps, and then immediately superset with a moderate to high rep isolation exercise. An example would be 6 reps of a heavy bench press, followed up immediately with 10 reps of flies. And if you're not failing at the end of those flies, then add weight. Another example would be 8 reps of a straight bar preacher curl, supersetted immediately with 20 reps of wide grip standing easy bar preacher curls. You can use drop sets the same way that you would use supersets to pump a whole bunch of blood into your muscles. Drop sets would involve you doing a set of bench press, for example, and then immediately doing another set of the same exercise with less weight. Then possibly immediately doing another set with even less weight. Supersets, drop sets, and trisets, when combined with heavy weight compound lifts, that produces major gains because these training strategies help pump your muscles full of a lot of blood. You want to try to hit all your muscles, including your legs, your upper body, and your core at least twice a week. By upping training frequency from once a week to twice a week, you can progress a lot faster because that affects overall training volume. Also remember that you grow your muscles when you rest, so make sure that you're not working the same muscle groups 2 days in a row, as you need at least 48 hours of rest before hitting the same muscle group again. Also, a split routine will work better for bodybuilding and muscle building purposes than a full body routine. Full body routines are much better for functional and athletic and applicable sports type training. So full body routines have many merits, but I promise you split training, which an example of that is if you work your chest and back one day and then legs the next day and then arms and core the following day, this type of training is much better to build muscle mass. I want everyone to understand functional strength and muscle mass are not necessarily related. If you're going strictly for muscle mass, then split training will work better for that. For more information on how to structure your heavy weight training program, there will be some links in the description and at the end of this video to other videos that I've made before. But before I leave the topic of training, I just want to touch on cardio. If you're a hard gainer, you should be doing zero cardio. And actually, for most people trying to gain muscle, even if you're not a hard gainer, I don't recommend a whole bunch of cardio. If you have to do like 2 or 3 days a week at the most to manage some body fat, that's fine. But remember, cardio burns calories, and you're trying to create a calorie surplus to build muscle, so it's kind of counterintuitive. The last thing that I want to quickly talk about is supplements. Creatine is one supplement that helped me get better pumps, lift more weights, and put on more muscle. Even though some studies show that creatine leads to going bald, I'm not bald yet. Maybe it's because I cycled creatine even when everyone said it's not necessary anymore. So I would only take creatine for 6 weeks maximum and then back off of it for 6 weeks. You don't have to load up on creatine either. You can just take the regular dosage. You also want protein powder. Even though you don't necessarily need it, it's just an easy way to get some extra protein in. And then you want a pre-workout. You can buy an already made pre-workout like Hemo Rage or NO Explode, or you can make your own using ingredients like beta-alanine, baking soda, B-complex, and caffeine. Just make sure that whatever you take, whether it's coffee or a pre-workout, you don't start to depend on it. I recommend you only take your pre-workout 2 or 3 days a week. Otherwise, you're going to develop a tolerance and it's going to lose its effectiveness. Okay guys, that's it. I am working on a comprehensive done-for-you bulking program, and you'll be able to get that from gravitytransformation.com very soon. Until then, I really hope that all this information I gave you today has helped you out. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified every time that I release new tips and tricks just like this. I'll see you guys soon. Pump it.